Tell me about Hilaire Belloc, because he's one of these people that a lot of Catholics may not know about, even if they know a little bit about Chesterton and Lewis.
Yeah, so one of my crusades, if you like, is to bring Belloc out from Chesterton's shadow, because most people, if they know Belloc, they know him because he's a friend of Chesterton's, and that's unjust, because actually his own literary achievement is equal. He's a great writer, a great thinker. In some aspects, such as political philosophy, Chesterton called himself Belloc's disciple. So this man's a major figure. So a sort of 2-minute version, cradle Catholic. Unlike most of the other leading literary Catholics, most of whom are converts, he was a cradle Catholic. He wrote a book called The Path to Rome, which is one of the most beautiful books I've ever read.
Really?
It's a metaphor for life.
Tell me about the book. What is? I've been told to read the book, never have.
Yeah. Well, so basically it happens in reality. This is the beauty of it. He's in northern France, in Toul, in northern France, where he served in the French military. He's Anglo-French, so his mother's English, his father's French. Serves in the French military, goes back after years later, sees the local village church renovated and beautiful and new. As an act of thanksgiving for the renovation of the church, he makes a vow he's going to walk to Rome from there, Toul, and he's not going to sleep in a bed. He's going to go to mass every day. He's not going to make use of any wheeled thing.
Any what thing?
Anything with wheels.
I say wheels,
right?
yeah.
And will arrive in Rome in time for the feast of St. Peter and Paul, June 29th, right? So he sets off, and of course, one by one, he breaks all the vows.
Okay. Makes me feel better about myself and the vows I've made.
Yeah, he literally breaks all the vows, and then, the wonderful thing at the top of the Alps, he's not going to go around the bottom of the Alps like the tourists. He's going to go straight line to Rome. That's his promise. He's going to go right over the top of the Alps, right? And of course, there's a blizzard up there. Yeah. And he bribes someone recklessly, because it's putting both their lives at risk, to get him over the hill, over the top of the mountain. They get within about 60 feet or something of the peak, and the guy says, "Look, if we don't go back down now, we're going to die." And he just refuses to go on. So Belloc goes back down again, and his pride is defeated. That's the whole point. His pride is defeated. And then eventually he's so tired in Italy, he jumps on a train and with the last of his money to get as far as he can. So he does arrive in Rome in time for Mass on June the 29th. And it's a metaphor for our lives, right? Is that we have the best of intentions. And insofar as our vows or rash vows,
yeah.
Right? We are going to break them. We shouldn't have made them in the first place.
I've got one right now that I've made, Joseph, that I should not have made. And I'm right now trying to think a way around it. Reminds me of Elizabeth Anscombe, who promised God for something and she would not smoke cigarettes anymore. And after she got what she wanted, she just started smoking cigars every day. I don't know if you know about this.
I didn't know that. And of course, pride is humbled, his vows are broken, but he perseveres by the grace of God. And there are certain moments where, for instance, there's a wonderful thing. This is a perfect example of it. He's French. He doesn't like the Germans, right? Okay. And he was born the year of the Franco-Prussian War, when the Germans invaded France. There's all sorts of reasons he doesn't like the Germans. He's Francophile. So he's going to cross the border into German-speaking Switzerland. So he buys this huge jug of red wine, because he's convinced that when he crosses the border to the barbarian countries of the German speakers, he won't get any decent wine, right?
Yes.
So he fills up, so he's got this with him, and then he says, he's really tired, right? And he's trying to struggle to go on, and he sits down, and all of a sudden he feels his burden miraculously light. And a split second later, he hears the crashing of his glass. Oh. He loses all of his wine.
Oh, funny. That was the lightning of the burden.
The miraculous lightning of his load is losing all of his wine. Crashing everything. And he's completely dejected, and he crosses the border. Because this is our metaphor for death, right? Crosses the border, and the wine he gets at this first inn was amongst the finest he's ever tasted. In one sense, he sort of criticized himself for being so anti-German, right? For not trusting his fellow Catholics on the other side of the border. But the other thing is, we cling on to the comforts of this life, and it's what keeps us going. But when we cross the border, these comforts will be as nothing to what is on offer when we die.
Wow. Was he French?
He was born in France, and he had to evacuate to England when he was a baby. In fact, it's very interesting. So he's born just as the Franco-Prussian War was starting in 1870, and the Germans, the Prussians, invade France. So they have to evacuate the family home, which is wrecked by the Germans, and they go to Paris, and they get the last train out to England from Paris. If they hadn't caught that train out, Belloc almost certainly would have died, because there's a siege of Paris which follows. And basically every infant under about 12 months old dies in the famine and disease that's a consequence. So he gets out, as a child, and then he spends the rest of his life in England, except for when he volunteers for the French military to do his national service. Other than that, he spends the rest of his life in England. So he would call himself, I tell you what he would call himself, another thing I love about Belloc, he's a localist. He would call himself French, right? That's his nation. But he would also call himself from Sussex, his shire, one particular shire in England. He did another walk, I won't go into details on this one, called the Four Men, where he just walks from the eastern border of Sussex to the western border of Sussex, about 75 miles, in the company of four men, myself, the sailor, the poet, and Grizzlebeard. Yeah. And these are all facets of his own character. Have you ever been on a long hike by yourself?
Yeah.
And you're talking, you're having dialogues with yourself about all sorts of things. So he is a sailor, he is a poet. Grizzlebeard's the historian. He's a historian, and myself is myself, right? So it's a beautiful book.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for encouraging me to maybe read it. I heard he was a prickly character, which is why I can relate to him a little. Is that right?
Yeah, I sometimes say that I talk about the difference between Chesterton and Belloc is that the difference between Chestertonian charity and Bellocian bellicosity. So Belloc's very happy to get in a fight, and sometimes does not have charity. So that's a real weakness. When Chesterton died, Belloc wrote a book called On the Place of Gilbert Keith Chesterton in the English Letters, and he said that Chesterton did not always go for the kill. If he's in a discussion with somebody in a debate, whereas Belloc would go for the jugular, this is a fight to the death and I'm going to win. Chesterton would not, deliberately not, because he's more interested in the soul of his adversary. And Belloc says it doesn't matter he didn't win because he's in heaven. So in other words, that Belloc knew that Chesterton's way of doing things was better than his own, and it was a weakness on his part.
I like that. I also, though, like that people are different. Obviously, not different in a sinful way, but there's something nice about you have a bunch of different friends. Some of them just happen to be more jovial and the glass is half full, and others are a little bit more prickly and a little bit more kind of irascible. And
I know, I agree. And the thing with Belloc, I mean, he often, when he's being his most bellicose, his most argumentative, he's got his tongue in his cheek. So there's a wonderful thing called a Sailor's Carol, which was Noel, 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 may all my enemies go to hell, Noel, Noel, I mean, we know he doesn't mean that. It's just meant to be funny. And if you have a sense of humour, then it's our problem, right? But he sort of, the other thing he said, I mean, when I die, may it be said, his sins were scarlet, but his books were red. Yeah. Again, he doesn't mean that. It's meant to be funny, right? One thing I love about Belloc, has a great sense of humor.
So I want to hear more about that, but I'm trying to understand, what are these little phrases that he uses called? Wherever the Catholic sun doth shine, there's always laughter and good red wine. At least I've always found it so something.
Benedicamus Domino. Yeah.
What is that kind of way of...
Well, it's epigrammatic wits, epigrams. So, you saying things that are succinct, that are memorable, that are pithy. Just a few lines. That's an epigrammatic, an epigram.
Chesterton was king of that.
Oh, he's wonderful too.
What does he say that an inconvenience is an adventure wrongly considered?
Rightly considered. An adventure is an inconvenience rightly considered.
I was saying it the other way around, though.
Yeah, well, right? An inconvenience is an adventure wrongly considered.
That's right.
Which is exactly true. I mean, if an adventure is not meant to be convenient, right? Yeah. If it's convenient, it's not an adventure.
Yeah. So, okay, you said he's got a great sense of humor.
Yeah, I mean, one of my favourites at the Chesterton conference last week. I gave a talk in Chesterton and Belloc, and I read. If I had it at the hand, I'd recite it. It takes too long, but he wrote a wonderful book called "Lines to a Don," and it's lines to a Don that dared attack my Chesterton, and it's about 60 lines of basically invective, every single term of abuse you can think of against this Don that dared attack his Chesterton. But it's spiced with humour, and it's meant to be funny. He doesn't name the Don. We mentioned earlier about don't aim at a particular person. It doesn't give his name, right? But it's hilarious. It's meant to be funny.
Here's some more quotes of his. The Catholic Church is an institution I am bound to hold divine, but for unbelievers, a proof of its divinity might be found in the fact that no merely human institution conducted with such knavish
probably.
Knavish imbecility would have lasted a fortnight. When one remembers how the Catholic Church has been governed and by whom, one realizes that it must have been divinely inspired to have survived it all. That's good. He's got a ton of these, does he?
Yeah, I mean, he's a great historian. He wrote a wonderful book called Europe and the Faith.
He says, one thing in this world is different from all others. It has personality and force. It is recognized, and when recognized, most violently hated or loved. It is the Catholic Church. Within that household, the human spirit has roof and hearth. Outside, it is the night. Yeah.
Yeah. Good man, huh?
You know, you saw his painting in our lounge? We have Belloc. Yeah, among those paintings.
Oh, no, I didn't.
Yeah.
He's one of them.
Yeah,
I didn't obviously look closely enough.
Yeah, Kraft, Belloc, Lewis, Chesterton, and Tolkien. Hey, thank you so much for watching. Before you go, do us a favor, leave a comment, let us know what you thought of the video, like, and subscribe.